All right, let's try this again. It didn't take it all last time. Well, welcome to TAC Chat number 13. I guess I'm doing it twice. Hopefully it takes it all this time. So this is the first one I'm doing this year. I haven't done a lot because there's censoring, and I didn't have a lot of material to begin with. But the way they're censoring, I was like, what's the point? But I want to put some stuff out there. I'm going to be careful on how I put it out there to get it out there. Got to be tricky with it, right? We got to be careful what we say and don't say. But I really want to talk about this book. I'm being called from spirit to talk. And when I say spirit, I mean God with a capital G. And I know God exists. And I'm talking about God with a capital G, not any lowercase variants. You can be talking about universal consciousness. You can put any name to it you want. I'm not talking about any lowercase variants that we've been slaughtering each other over for the last 2,021 years. With that being said, in this book, I do talk about religion in two senses. One in the colloquial sense, the commonly referred to sense. And I know some really good people in that sense that have religions. And they have good spiritual practices within their religions. They have tolerance, forgiveness, humility, most important, charity behind the scenes, not with a camera up front, right? They don't deserve to lose their religion. But then there's the etymological sense, which is the origin of the word. What did it mean? And it comes from the Latin verb religare, to bind, to rebind, to redo. Think of a word, think of someone who does something religiously. Think of it in a sentence. They got up and ran every day at 6 o'clock religiously. Do over and over and over again. There's no forward progress. And in that sense, we got half-truths and contradictions from religions, and I think that's just to control humanity, including the 7 deadly sins. There's nothing deadly about those sins. Those sins are all, first off, those sins are all human things that we all need to do to one degree or another. And those sins are about, don't do them in excess. They're not deadly sins. Period. That's about controlling you. And I think that's what people are getting angry about as far as religion is concerned. I had to come to that realization because of the shame over sexual addictions, I guess. I guess if you're looking at too much porn, that's what that can be considered, right? That was that kind of lower lizard brain outlet that I had, along with too much exercising, along with smoking. And I got by all that, kind of in the same way. And they make these addictions, they break these addictions down and they want to try to make them overcomplicated. There's process addictions, there's chemical addictions, and they're really one and the same. If you have a process addiction, you're getting that quick dopamine hit, right? So there's your chemical. If you got a chemical addiction, well, during the ingestion of that chemical, there's usually some type of process that you're doing or partaking in. So there's a process even in the chemical ingestion. They're the same. And I talk about that in this book and how I had to get over it with very little help from others because of entanglements with government employment. I'm speaking a lot from I, and I don't want that to come across as self-centered. A lot of times when people teach, I'm a teacher, I've taught for a long time, we tend to say we this, we that, we this, we that. Whenever this happens, this is what we usually do. It's you trying to make a connection with the people you're talking to. I'm talking to I right now because, when I went through my dark night of the soul in 2014, I was alone. And when you read about this in the book, I'm very descriptive. And you can decide for yourself what kind of dark night of the soul that was. Most people, if you go through your dark night of the soul, more than likely you're going to do it alone. But there's a lot of people who don't even go through it because they lack the ability to self-reflect or to introspect. And, you have to do your shadow work. And your shadow work isn't merely just, naming off bad habits you know about yourself that you usually keep tucked away because you don't like them. Because they're not congruent with who you want to be or whatever. That's not shadow work. Shadow work is finding out what was in the shadows, finding out what you didn't know about yourself or what you hadn't remembered. And in this case, there's a lot of stuff from my childhood that came up, probably from writing my first book. There's a lot of friends that will listen to this, and from my childhood, man, you're gonna like there's shit y'all didn't know. Trust me, you read this book, you're gonna see shit you didn't know. So that was part of the shadow work. I talk about some of the supernatural signs I had, and that's what I was calling them at first, supernatural. And the truth of it is they're always there. When you start to wake up, when you start to awaken, all of nature will wake up to you. It's amazing, actually. And all of nature started to wake up to me. And I had all these synchronicities and all this, shamanism, shamanic animal spirit guides, not totems. That's different. Animal totems are different than spirit guides. You have all kinds of different animal spirit guides when they come to you at certain times. And I had this happening. And I know I grew up in the hood, so I got a lot of friends and family of color who are going to be like, oh no, Dan, that's the whitest thing you've ever said. Forgive me. This was true. I think we're all connected as one. Maybe I was going nuts, but it's still happening. It's been happening now for 4 solid years. And you call them omens, like in the book The Alchemist. I'm in my 4th year. If I don't start acting on the omens, they're going to go away. And they're beautiful, despite all the craziness that's going on in this world. I just worked out, actually. Let me drink something here. Excuse me. I exercise a lot still. I try to. I think it's a good time in our history for us to have good cardiovascular, good vascular health, I would say. So when the spirit guides started coming to me, I get into detail when they came and how I was interpreting them, and this was without study. It was almost like telepathic. But then I started studying because I wanted to research. These things start happening to you, you realize something's odd, you start researching, you start reading. There's a dove outside right now. That's odd. Okay, cool. Anyway, so one of the things, like I had someone ask me, well, how do you know that they're coming to you at these certain times, right? And this is some of the stuff I talk about in the book. And I explained it to him real simply, and he understood it. It's what were you contemplating at the time that this animal appeared? What were you hearing? What did you identify with? Or what aha moment, maybe in a podcast or in something you read that made you take pause to contemplate, and then boom, the animal shows up. There's many other things to take into account. One of the things to take into account is that animal rare. Is it hardly in that area? As a definite sign. Find out what it's telling you. Many times these animals have messages for us. We are all interconnected. We're all one. That's the theory of animism. There's energy between all of us. Everything has souls. I know animals have souls. That's why I've been a vegetarian for a while now. It's not because I didn't used to like to eat cheeseburgers. Trust me. So another thing to think about is, what if it's a common animal? Well, how's it acting? Is it acting odd, right? So I had a little bit of both. When I was in Florida, I had a mockingbird come all of a sudden. I hadn't seen a mockingbird there before. And this was last June. And I was pretty much almost done writing this book. And I knew what direction this book was going to be going. And I talk about karma, natural law, the law of cause and effect, hermetic principles, different things in this book that have been around a long time. Okay? Hermes Trismegistus, also known as Thoth, the Egyptian god of, what's the Egyptian god of wisdom? I think both those guys are actually Enoch. That's how far back hermetic principles go. That's just a theory, but that comes from reading and studying, a bunch of different things. I'll get into that in other podcasts. But I was in Florida, and this mockingbird shows up 2 days in a row, going nuts, like really going nuts on the pole. It's really acting crazy, singing, jumping up and down by itself, looking at me. I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow. And mockingbirds have a special message for you. Their message is usually, you need to start sharing information that someone else is sharing. But they do so with a warning to do it in your own way. Don't mock that person. Don't try to do it exactly like how that person's doing it. Put your own spin on it. Do it through your own experiences, which is something that I did in this book. I talk about my own experiences. This is a memoir from my childhood right on up. Right up through the Marine Corps, through working in a prison, through being a cop, all the things I dealt with in the order following business. And the natural law effects of being in that business, what it had on me. Okay? It's about getting over unhealthy coping mechanisms and vices. I didn't even have to put the porn thing in there if I didn't want to, but I felt like I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't. I could have kept that totally to myself, and this book would still be very relevant. That's not the main thing in this book. You'll see by the end, it's not the main thing in this book at all. So, I was getting a sign from this Mockingbird. I sent an email to somebody who does a lot of content. You know, I didn't hear back from him, but that's cool. But, you know, I'd seen a couple of shows of theirs later. I'm not going to mention who it is. I'm not going to mention no names on this you know, show, on this little podcast, whoever watches it. But I felt like he might have been talking to me, maybe, you know. And, you know, that's just, right, the universe revolves around each and every one of us. But I knew I'd messed up one of my podcasts about a month later. There was a piece of information on there I didn't put out right. I really didn't just put out something right that needed a clarification. And I'm like, okay, I need to clarify this, because someone else has done a lot of good work on this, and they would have every right to call me the fuck out on it, right? And so all that week, you know, I'm still not used to this form of communication that much, although I have done a lot of more Zoom classes, so I'm getting more and more used to it, right? The whole week I had time to think, wow, what am I going to say? How do I clarify this? It's not hard to do. I know it. Let me clarify this. So Friday I was going to do it, and I started to do it, and I just stumbled over it, and I'm like, shit, well, let me get a drink. I don't normally do that. So I won't drink before I do one of these things, you know? I don't drink a whole lot anymore anyway, but I'm not going to drink before one of these things. Well, I had a drink. I tried to do it. It didn't work. I'm like, okay, screw it. I ain't doing it. So Saturday comes. And Saturday night I'm in the backyard, and I'll try to tell this story fast, because I've told it once, and the first time I told it, it didn't record. So, I mean, the first time it probably came across way more authentic than this time, but I just was thinking to myself, okay, I really ought to do this, because if not, there's a good chance this dude's going to call me out, and he'd every right to, and I really don't know if I want to be now called out. Oh, fuck it, maybe whatever, I'll get called out. And then this bird lands on the fence, okay? And it was a bird that's very common around here, but it wasn't acting normally, okay? It was a robin. Very common in this area, although I've had ravens and crows that aren't very common in this area of northeast Ohio and Cleveland. Robins are. And this robin just jumped on the fence as I was thinking that, landed on the fence, and just like kind of turned its head and was like looking at me, like it was judging me. There was almost a telepathic link, like it was saying, "Coward, go do it." And it was a larger than normal robin. It looked a little beat up. And I'm smiling at that now, because the thought that came to my mind at the time was, it's like a junkyard dog. So I nicknamed it the junkyard robin. And just looking at me like, all right, okay, cool. So I go into my garage, and I go to get a drink. So I some type of drink. It wasn't alcohol at that time. And I go into my garage to get something to drink, and there's a space between my garage, just to put it, there's like a camper, and then there's a space. The camper's down low, and you go around into the garage. So in order to be in the garage entrance, this bird had to fly underneath the camper and land at the garage entrance. So I turn around this drink, and the bird's just still staring there looking at me. And I was like, holy shit, if that's not an omen, I don't know what is. I'm going to go downstairs, boom, and I just hit it. Just naturally hit it. I did okay. You know, it was quick. It was maybe 10 minutes, bam. Next day, the guy seemed like he understood and was really cool, so I didn't get called out. That's great, you know. That's one little thing that's gone on with all these omens that I've had. And I write about all the animal, all the spirit guides I've had when they came into my life, all the synchronicities. I took pictures. I got all that stuff in this book. That may not be interesting to you, but the propaganda I talk about, what's going on in the world right now, I talk about. in general terms. You know, what is gaslighting, how to overcome shame, how I overcame it, how to get your confidence back. And I tie it all together in the end with what's kind of going on in the world now, and how it all ties in with, you know, karmic law or natural law. And it's my personal experience throughout my life with it. So it's there. You know, I think I suffered the negative consequential effects of natural law because of my actions and lack thereof as an order follower. I'll leave it at that. I never did nothing like illegal or anything, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. I think there's going to come a time where, you know, you order followers out there, like I said, like last year at this very time when we were supposed to be just flattening the curve, there's going to become a time when you're going to be given an immoral order, which is objectively immoral, okay? There's no subjectiveness to it, and you're going to have to disobey that order. And unfortunately, in history, I've seen a lot that don't. And I'm going to get into other shows where we talk about history, and it isn't going to be World War II. The fall of every civilization has been the same. Change the currency, change the religion, feminize the men, and get the populace to fight each other. You know, it happened in Rome, it happened in Greece. We'll talk about that. You know, I might do a podcast where we start talking about conspiracy theories, because I'm a conspiracy theorist, and start talking about some other things along those lines. But I wanted to talk about the book. You know, it's a 255-page book. It's got a lot of helpful information in it. It's got a lot of interesting information in it, at least for people who know me. But I think even if you don't know me, it could be a self-help book. But I wrote it in a memoir style. You know, how to overcome addictions, bad habits, how to overcome shame, how to regain your confidence, how to know when you're being manipulated. You know, people might say, hey, Dan, you're talking about religion, you're talking about this and that. Where's your theology degree? And I would say, you know, I have studied on my own. I don't have a degree. But there's a lot of people out there with degrees who've still been arguing over these contradicting, confusing things, purposely contradicting things for centuries. I'll leave that at that. You know, hey, Dan, you're doing a lot of armchair psychology. Well, how do you get a psychology degree? I'm not claiming to be a psychologist, but how do you get one? You study, you attend lectures, you read, right? You know, you listen to people who know more than you. You deal with humanity, you deal with people. I was in law enforcement for 27 years. I dealt with people. I had to de-escalate people who were in crisis. You learn about psychology. I've trained fighters. You learn about psychology. Most people do all that, then they do their clinicals, and then they get out into the world, right? They write a dissertation before they do it. I did like 30 years of clinicals first. I kind of did it backwards. Then I got educated a little formally, wrote two 50,000-word dissertations. So, yeah, I don't have a degree, but good luck using dark psychology on me. I've already had people try that. It don't work. It'll never work again. It worked once. That was because of the weaponization of shame, which will never happen again. Never let nobody have that kind of control over you. There's healthy shame, and then there's the weaponization of shame. And I get into that in this book ad nauseum because people need to understand it. That's part of the human condition. Internalized toxic shame has been around since humanity, along with slavery. People confuse the human condition with human nature all the time. Well, that's just human nature. Human nature is learned. It's a human condition. Human nature is not good nor bad. It's neutral. We're born neutral. There's no original sin. That's a lie that the religions tell you. Okay? And these are some of my beliefs based off of research. And I believe in Jesus and his teachings. And he taught natural law. There's not enough Christians that actually believe in Jesus' teachings or can even agree upon them. But there's a lot of good Christians I know and a lot of good people in the faith of Islam and Judaism that have good, pious, spiritual practices that don't deserve to lose their religion because they're not doing nothing to hurt nobody. The ones who are need to be dealt with on an individual basis. There's too many freedoms getting taken away right now. Part of this book was about self-accountability, and about being able to admit when you're wrong. To say those 3 forbidden words, I was wrong. People can't say that anymore. I don't know why. If you're wrong, just admit it. And God, was I wrong about so much. And I get into that in this book. It's a 255-page book, double-spaced, easy to read. If it was single-spaced, it'd be about 170 pages. Memoirs usually aren't large books. So you could probably read it in about 4 hours. If you do read it, I'd love to have your feedback on it. And I think that's all I'm going to put out for now. This probably isn't going to even be as good as the first one I put out, but I messed something up, so I said, you know what? Willpower. I'm going to do this again because I just got to do it. I'm going to be putting more stuff out there. I'm happy the universe lines you up with people when you are vibrating at the right frequency and when you're not letting all this fear porn get to you. I talk about porn, fear porn on mainstream news media. I don't even watch it anymore. The prostitutes of mainstream news media. I don't watch it no more. All they're trying to do is lower your vibration, lower it and get you scared. Fuck that. Smile. Don't be afraid. All they're trying to do is get you scared. Media. Greek goddess Medea, right? Is that how it's pronounced? The Greek goddess Medea? The Greek goddess of illusion. Good name for the media. Don't watch them. Don't waste your time. Take care of your family. Tell people you love them. Help people. Be about the real world. Don't watch their bullshit. Live every moment. Live in the moment every moment. That's the best thing I can tell you. I don't have a script here, but anyway, till I come back on next time, peace.